When people picture Japan in their mind, usually a woman wearing a kimono will come up. As it should, because kimono are a beautiful piece of Japanese tradition that has lived on throughout centuries of change in Japan. So today we're going to talk a little bit about everything kimono. First off, kimono literally means thing to wear. The word is comprised of the two kanji for to wear and thing. So if there's one thing you're going to remember about kimono, it's a thing to wear. But more importantly, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you do have to wear a kimono, remember to wrap it around yourself left over right. If you wear it the opposite, you're basically saying you're a ghost, because the only time they do it right over left is for the burial of the dead. So unless you're a kimono wearing zombie, left over right. The earliest known kimono were called gofuku, the clothes of Wu, and they are said to have been influenced by the Han Chinese clothing. But during the Heian period and the Muromachi era is where they became more like the kimono we know today, with the obi or sash being introduced to wrap the kimono rather than the apron-like pants known as hakama. It was during the Edo period that the sleeve length began to grow, the obi became wider, and more styles came into fashion. Since then, the kimono has essentially remained unchanged. However, when most people think of a kimono, they're not actually thinking of a kimono at all, but rather a yukata, which is a type of informal kimono made of thinner material that you'll see used for everyday wear, most commonly seen at Japanese festivals, usually during the summer. But kimono aren't just for women, they're for men too, they're just styled differently. Men's kimono fall approximately to the ankle without any tucking, while women's kimono have additional length to allow for the ohashori. That's the tuck that can be seen under the obi, and it's used to adjust the kimono to the wearer. The kimono is made from a single bolt of fabric called a tan and is traditionally no wider than 36 centimeters or 14 inches, but modern kimono can be woven as much as 42 centimeters or 17 inches wide. Though if you are a particularly tall or heavy person, you gotta get your kimono custom made, and that's no cheap feat. Actually, kimonos don't come cheaply. In fact, if you were going to buy the traditional kimono with all the parts included, it would cost you roughly $20,000. Dollars, not yen. However, you can find cheaper ones owned by hobbyists or traditional arts practitioners. Yukata are even less expensive, ranging from $15 to $100 depending on where you get them from, but the average yukata that I saw in department stores would be around $60 to $80. Now, I said before that a kimono and all the parts would cost you roughly a year of American college tuition if you go to a cheap college. But what are those other parts? Well, you already know about the main robe, the kimono itself, and the obi, the sash used to tie it, but there are a lot more parts to kimono. There's the obi-age, a scarf-like sash that's knotted and tied above the obi and worn for more formal varieties of kimono. There's the tabi, the ankle-high divided toe socks, and geita or zori, the flip-flop-like sandals. Nagajuban, the kimono-shaped robe worn underneath the main robe. Kanzashi, the hair ornaments worn by women. And koshihimo, the small sashes used to aid in dressing up. There are a lot more parts depending on the occasion, season, and gender, but those are the essential parts of the female kimono. Male kimono have a few different items, such as the haori, a hip or thigh-length kimono-style jacket, and the netsuke, the ornament worn suspended from the obi. Men's kimono are a lot simpler than the female kimono, and cheaper too, much like every part of fashion in today's world. Like I said, there are more items for different occasions and styles of kimono, but what are those styles? For starters, there is furisode. This is probably one of the more formal types of kimono worn for unmarried women. This is usually worn for coming of age ceremonies or at weddings for female relatives of the bride who are unmarried. The difference between furisode and regular kimono are the sleeve length, which can go from 39 to 72 inches long. That's a really long sleeve. Homongi is also known as visiting wear and can be worn regardless of marital status and is usually worn at weddings by friends of the bride or at formal parties. The iromuji is a single colored kimono usually worn for tea ceremonies. The komon is the more casual style kimono that you can wear around town or dressed up with a formal obi for a restaurant. The morning kimono, called mofuku, is worn by both men and women, and as you can tell, involves a lot of black. And the last two are irotomesode and kurotomesode. Irotomesode is a single colored kimono patterned below the waist, usually worn at weddings or at medal ceremonies at the royal court. And kurotomesode is a black kimono patterned below the waist, worn by mothers of the bride and groom at weddings. So yeah, there's a lot more to a kimono than a pretty silk robe. If you have further questions or comments, please leave them down below or on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. And please go check out the stuff I have on sale at eBay right now or in my Etsy store, where you can buy like this really cool necklace right here, or this beaded stretchy bracelet that I made myself. Go check it out. It'd be awesome and help me get back to Japan. Thank you for those who suggested this week's topic. You too can choose the topics for Japanese culture and language if you just leave them in the comments below, and I will see you next week, cuties. Bye! through centuries. Actually, kimonos, the included parts. Words, work. Come out of my mouth in the right order, please.